At Christmas, my niece pointed at my son and said, "Grandma says you're the maid's kid." Everyone laughed. I took my boy's hand and left without a word. That night, Dad texted, "Make sure you send the utility payment tomorrow." I replied, "You will get what you deserve." They did not realize what awaited them the next day. When my niece pointed at my son and said that garbage about him being the maid's kid, everyone laughed. Every single one of them. My mother actually chuckled and looked at my sister like it was some kind of private joke between them. My dad didn't even look up from his plate. I just stood there for a second trying to figure out if I'd really heard it right. But then Natalie kept talking. "Grandma says he probably isn't even your real son. She says you brought him home to get attention after your husband died." Eli heard all of it. His face didn't change much, but he squeezed my hand and that was enough. I didn't say a word. I didn't ask them what the hell they were thinking, or how they could let a 9-year-old say something so disgusting and cruel. I didn't even grab the stack of cheap presents I'd brought for them. I just turned around, took my son's hand and walked out of my parents' house for what would be the last time. No one followed us. No one called my name. They just went back to opening gifts like we'd never been there. It was snowing, the roads were getting worse by the hour and I was shaking. Eli asked if he did something wrong. I told him no, not even close. I told him we were going to see someone who actually loved us. My grandma lives in Ashbury, about 2 hours away. She's 81 and has more fight in her than the rest of my family combined. After my grandpa died, she married a retired mechanic named Frank, who wears cowboy boots year-round and makes inappropriate jokes at the worst moments. They're both a little wild and Eli adores them. When we showed up unannounced, Frank opened the door in flannel pajamas with a beer in one hand and a half-eaten gingerbread man in the other. He squinted at me, then shouted over his shoulder that we had a situation. Grandma came running barefoot on cold tile. She saw my face and told Frank to take Eli to the kitchen for cocoa. She didn't say anything for a while. Just let me cry in the hallway like I was a kid again. When I finally told her everything, about the dinner, the laughter, what Natalie had said and how my parents just sat there like it was normal, she nodded slowly then walked off to her bedroom. I thought she was just going to get a tissue or maybe some old photos to cheer me up. Instead, she came back with a thick white envelope and dropped it on the coffee table. "That's yours. Open it." Inside was a deed to a 2-bedroom condo in my neighborhood, not even 10 minutes from Eli's school. Paid off. No mortgage, no strings, just a key taped to the back page and a little sticky note that said, "You've earned this 100 times over." I couldn't even speak. I just stared at her. She sat down next to me, pulled out her phone and said she had one more thing to take care of. Then she called my mom. "Put it on speaker. You're cut off, Jean. You, Mark, Rachel, all of you. You won't get another dime from me. I know what you said to Stacy. I know what you let Natalie say. And I know exactly how much money you've squeezed out of her since Aaron died. That ends today. Find someone else to pay your bills." My mom didn't even argue. She just hung up. Later that night, while I was tucking Eli into the guest room, my dad texted me like nothing had happened. "Make sure you send the utility payment tomorrow. They're threatening to shut it off." I replied with one sentence, "You will get what you deserve." They didn't know it yet, but this wasn't just about a text or a holiday dinner. It was about years. Years of being used. Years of being the invisible one. Years of being the family scapegoat and the emergency wallet, while they took cruises, posted fake happy photos, and let my child grow up thinking he wasn't good enough. That night, for the first time in a long time, I slept without a knot in my chest. They had no idea what was coming the next day. By 9 a.m. the next morning, they were already scrambling. The first text came from Rachel. "No, good morning. No, I'm sorry. Just one line. Did you say something to Grandma? The bank just declined my card." I didn't answer. I just sat there in the little breakfast nook of Grandma's house, sipping coffee while Eli built a Lego city on the carpet behind me. The fireplace was going and for once it felt like Christmas. Peaceful, quiet, warm. By noon my mom was in full panic mode. Her voicemails started piling up. "Call me back, Stacy. This is serious. Your father just got a call from the mortgage company." Then another, "Your sister's in tears. Natalie's private school tuition is due this week. What did you do?" That one made me laugh. What I did. These were the same people who sat and watched their granddaughter mock my child like he was a dog begging for scraps. Who let her say he wasn't family. Who said nothing when I walked out. Now they wanted answers. Help. Sympathy. They had no idea Grandma moved fast. That morning she pulled the last strings, closed the trust fund she'd set up for emergencies, which they drained to take a healing trip to Turks and Caicos after Rachel's divorce. She shut down every automatic transfer and removed her name from any account that wasn't mine. She even sent a letter to Natalie's school, stating she was no longer sponsoring her tuition and would not be responsible for any future payments. Rachel called me 23 times that day. 23. Eventually she gave up and tried texting. You can't do this to us. This isn't who you are. And then 5 minutes later. You're just bitter because your life didn't turn out like you wanted. That one stung a little. Because the truth is, no, my life didn't turn out the way I wanted. I didn't want to be a widow at 31, raising a child alone in a one-bedroom rental while my family treated me like a failure and my son like an afterthought. But I never asked them for anything. Never. And yet, I was the one keeping their lights on. I was the one covering their overdraft fees so they wouldn't lose the country club membership they didn't even need. I was the one they leaned on and spat on. The final straw came that evening. My dad texted me a photo of a stack of bills, phone, water, gas, with a message that said, "Your mother is crying. Hope that makes you happy." I stared at that message for a long time. Then I wrote back, "You've had 9 years to treat us like family. You chose not to. Now live like we never existed." Blocked him. That night, Grandma made a steak dinner. Frank opened a bottle of wine and told a story about crashing a parade float in 1974. Eli fell asleep with a blanket wrapped around him and a dog on his feet. I sat on the couch and realized I hadn't felt this steady in years. No one was coming to save me. But someone finally stood beside me. The next day I drove to the apartment she gave me. I unlocked the door, turned on the heat, and sat on the empty floor while sunlight poured through the windows. It wasn't huge. It wasn't fancy. But it was ours. Meanwhile, my phone sat silent. Except for one final email from Rachel's husband, who I hadn't heard from since their second honeymoon last spring. "Hey Stacy, heard about the apartment. Must be nice. We're thinking about downsizing too. Let's catch up sometime." I closed the email. Then I laughed until I cried. They weren't worried about making things right. They were worried they wouldn't get another handout. They weren't family. They were debt collectors with shared DNA. But this time the bank was closed. By New Year's Eve their calls had stopped. They moved on from begging to blaming. The narrative flipped like a switch. Suddenly I wasn't the wounded daughter or the single mom doing her best. I was the traitor. The snake. The one who turned Grandma against the family. They told everyone. Rachel posted something passive-aggressive on Facebook. A long, fake-sounding story about betrayal and how some people use a child to climb a ladder, but that ladder won't always hold. I didn't even respond. I didn't have to. Because Grandma commented right under it. "If the ladder broke, it's because you kept sawing at the bottom, dear." A few hours later, Rachel deleted the whole post. But that didn't stop them. My mom called my work. Told them I had been mentally unstable during the holidays and might need some time off. She left a message with HR pretending to be concerned, saying I'd been erratic, and probably shouldn't be around clients right now. I only found out because a woman in HR I'd worked with for years called me privately and said, "Whatever's going on with your mom, it's not our business, but you should know what she's doing." My hands were shaking when I hung up. Then my dad got clever. He tried to reopen one of the utility accounts I'd been paying for, using my name. Had the nerve to try and switch the billing address to his house. The electric company flagged it immediately because the account was already marked suspicious after I reported years of unauthorized charges months earlier. Back then I had just let it slide. This time I filed the fraud report. Rachel tried the most desperate move of all. She showed up at Eli's school. Told the front desk she was there to pick him up. Said I'd asked her to. Only reason she didn't get away with it was because one of the office staff recognized her from a birthday party years ago and got suspicious. They called me right away, and by the time I got there she was already gone. I filed a report with the school district. Then I had the school update my contact list. Only 2 names allowed now, me and Grandma. I didn't tell Eli. I didn't want him scared. I just told him things were a little crazy but he was safe. He looked up at me and said, "Are they mad because you told the truth?" That stuck with me. Because yeah, that's exactly what it was. I told the truth. For once. I stopped covering for them. I stopped pretending. And they hated me for it. Grandma wasn't shocked. She just kept shaking her head and saying, "I should have done this years ago. I spoiled them rotten and now they don't know how to live like real people." She didn't slow down either. She sold off an investment account that had been set aside for future family needs, and moved half of it directly into an account in my name. No more pretending she might change her mind later. No more room for manipulation. She called it a survival fund, not for rent or bills. For anything I wanted. Meanwhile, my parents were spiraling. The mortgage was past due. Rachel had to withdraw Natalie from private school. And according to a message I got from one of Rachel's old friends, someone who clearly wasn't loyal, they were telling people I'd stolen Grandma from them. Like she was a prize to be won, not a woman with her own brain. By the first week of January they were out of options. That's when the threats started. One night I came home from the grocery store and found a typed letter shoved under my apartment door. No return address. It said, "You think this is over? Blood is blood. You're making enemies in your own blood." I showed it to Grandma. She poured herself a glass of wine and said, "Good. Let them hate you from a distance." Then she looked at me and said, "You ready for what comes next?" I said yes, because by then I was done being afraid of them. I thought it was over after the school stunt. I thought maybe the silence meant they'd finally backed off. But that morning, a white sedan parked across the street from the apartment and stayed there for 3 hours. Didn't move. The guy inside never got out, just sat there pretending to scroll through his phone. I noticed him right away. He wasn't from the building. He didn't belong. And I've spent enough years living in sketchy neighborhoods to trust my gut. I called Grandma. She didn't even ask questions. She called someone else. By the time I looked out the window again, Frank was standing next to the sedan with one hand on the roof, casually talking. He wasn't smiling. The guy in the car started the engine and drove off. I never saw him again. When Frank came back upstairs, he just said, "They're watching you now. You ready for what's next?" I was tired of waiting. The next day I took the file box Grandma had given me, the one I hadn't even finished going through, and opened the rest. Inside I found more than I expected. Bank statements, yes. PayPal screenshots, wire transfers, debt notices Grandma had quietly paid off without ever mentioning. But tucked inside an envelope labeled 2009 to 2014 was something else. Documents with my name on them. Apparently, right after my husband died, my parents had claimed me as a dependent on their taxes, 3 years in a row, to get credits and refunds. I had no idea. I was working full-time, raising a child and paying my own way through everything, but somehow they still used me to make a few $1,000s more every spring. I ran a background check on myself. They'd opened a credit card in my name back in 2011. Maxed it out. Never paid it. It was still sitting on my credit report. Nearly $7,000 in debt. That was when something in me shifted. All this time I thought I was the embarrassment. The broke one. The dependent. The one they tolerated during the holidays. But they weren't just cruel. They were leeches. They fed off me. Quietly. Carefully. And legally until they got sloppy. I filed a police report. Then I hired a lawyer. Just a small one. Someone Grandma knew from her church. A quiet woman with a soft voice and a brutal sense of justice. We started small. Letters. Formal notices. Identity theft claims. IRS alerts. The kind of paperwork that doesn't make noise at first, but crushes everything in its path once it gets moving. Then something I didn't expect happened. Rachel's husband called me. I almost didn't answer, but curiosity got the better of me. He didn't threaten me. He didn't scream. He begged. He said things were falling apart. That Rachel was acting erratic. That she'd started drinking again. That my parents were accusing her of losing the family's lifeline. That he found out about the forged tuition forms. He said he had nothing to do with it and he believed me now. I asked him why he was really calling. He hesitated. Then he said, "She wants to take Natalie and disappear. She said she'd rather vanish than have to face what she did." I didn't know what to say to that. I don't care about Rachel. But I care about Natalie. As cruel as she's been, she's still a kid. And no child deserves to be dragged into the fallout of a war they didn't start. I told him to get a lawyer. Fast. I told him Grandma had every document, every date, every receipt. And I told him one more thing before I hung up. "You should have spoken up earlier." That same day, my landlord from the old place texted me. "Just got a call from your mom. She said she needs your old rent receipts for a loan application." I told her you moved and blocked the number. They were still trying. Even as everything fell apart, they couldn't stop grasping. That night, Grandma handed me another key. I thought it was to a storage unit or something small. She smiled and said, "It's time they saw what real family looks like." It was the key to a cabin. In Colorado. Paid off. Quiet, remote. A place for weekends, for getaways, for new memories. He told me it was mine. I hadn't even processed the apartment yet. And now this. But what got me most wasn't the property or the gesture. It was what she said after. "You never asked me for anything. Not once. And they asked me for everything every week. That's the difference." It came in a certified envelope with a shiny seal and fake importance. I knew it was a stunt the second I saw my legal name printed on the label. Inside was a formal demand from my parents' attorney. They were suing me. Not threatening to. Not bluffing. An actual lawsuit. The letter claimed I owed them nearly $50,000. They listed things like childhood living costs, emotional labor, and family investment into future earning potential. They even had the nerve to include a line about contributions during the period of bereavement following husband's death. They were charging me for being a widow. I handed the letter to Grandma. She didn't flinch. Just said, Then it's time we stop playing nice. We called her lawyer. The quiet woman with the steel trap memory who didn't blink when I told her what was happening. She already had a stack of documentation on standby from everything we'd submitted earlier. The forged signatures, the stolen credit, the falsified tuition paperwork. But the lawsuit never got off the ground. Because 3 days later Rachel was arrested. Not questioned. Not warned. Arrested. Apparently, the school had been conducting their own internal audit after my complaint. They'd discovered years of altered forms tied to state-funded scholarships. And when they cross-checked the financial documents with the tax records, everything unraveled. It wasn't just fraud. It was federal fraud. In the school, they had zero interest in covering for her. Her mugshot hit a local crime blog first. I got the link from a high school classmate I hadn't talked to in a decade. An hour later, it was on a community news site. She looked tired, pale, and angry. Nothing like the carefully curated Instagram version of herself. I didn't share the link. I didn't need to. People found it. And then my mom's lawyer called mine and quietly withdrew the lawsuit. No explanation. Just a single sentence. We're choosing not to pursue this matter at this time. Of course they were. The same week my dad tried to play cleanup. I got a text from a number I didn't recognize. Just said, "We all made mistakes. No one deserves to go to jail over family stuff. Please don't push this." I didn't respond. Because I hadn't pushed anything. I hadn't framed them. I hadn't manipulated anyone. I just finally stopped covering for them. And they imploded on their own. But Grandma wasn't done. She held a family meeting at her house. Not for sympathy. For clarity. She invited whoever still spoke to her. A few cousins, one of her brothers, and aunt. My parents didn't show up. Neither did Rachel. No one expected them to. She stood in the center of the room with her wedding ring in one hand and her will in the other. She said, "Every dime I have is going to Stacy and Eli. The rest of you chose where you stood. And if silence was your choice, then silence is what you'll get in return." No one argued. No one even looked surprised. I think by then they all knew the family was split in two. The ones who helped bury the knife and the one they tried to bleed. After that, my parents sent one final message. "If this is how it's going to be, then we're done. Don't come around when she's gone. Don't show up pretending you care." Then they blocked me. Just like that. No warning. No grand finale. Just a clean break. And I let them. Because by then I didn't want revenge anymore. I had peace. They had nothing left to steal. The silence didn't come with fireworks. No final scream, no slammed doors, no apologies soaked in guilt. Just a notification on my phone. This contact is no longer available. Then another. Then another. Walked. From every angle. As if they were cutting me off. As if that was supposed to hurt. I stared at the screen for a long time. And then I realized they actually thought they'd won. But here's the thing. You don't win by deleting someone from your phone. You win by reclaiming your life. Quietly. Completely. And never letting them near it again. The weekend after they blocked me, I took Eli to the cabin. It had snowed the night before and everything looked untouched. Smooth hills of white, icicles on the porch railing, pine trees heavy with silence. The kind of quiet you only get in places where people don't ruin it. We lit a fire, made hot chocolate, and played a board game on the floor with no phone service, no Wi-Fi, and no drama. That night, Eli fell asleep with his head on my lap while I watched the fire fade. For the first time in years, I wasn't waiting for the other shoe to drop. I wasn't bracing for the next insult disguised as concern. I wasn't wondering if I'd done something wrong. They were gone. Not missing. Not lost. Gone by choice. Or so they wanted to believe. But they didn't realize that I let go first. Long before the messages stopped. Long before the calls. Even before that Christmas disaster. I was already halfway out. They just gave me the last push. And Grandma? She was thriving. She got new glasses, joined a book club, and started going to town meetings just to argue about speed limits and zoning laws. She bought Eli a telescope and told him the stars belonged to him now. Frank built him a tree swing behind the cabin. And me? I stopped apologizing for surviving. I painted the walls of the new apartment pale yellow. I put real curtains up instead of sheets tacked to window frames. I cooked dinner more. Fucked more. Smiled more. I wasn't healing. I was living. Something they told me I wasn't strong enough to do on my own. They were wrong about that. Just like they were wrong about everything else. Sometimes people ask about them. Old neighbors, distant cousins, someone at work who followed the story when it got ugly. What happened with your family? I just say, they left. It's simpler than explaining the years of manipulation, the fake smiles at holidays, the betrayal disguised as tradition. It's easier than listing the lies, the threats, the damage. They left. And I stayed. And that's the difference. But there's one more thing. 2 weeks ago I got a letter. Handwritten. No return address. Just my name in familiar cursive. Inside were two things. A photo. One of me and Eli from a few years back taken at a family picnic before things got really bad. We're smiling. It looks staged. And a single sentence written on the back of a grocery receipt. You always thought you were stronger than you are. I stared at that sentence for a long time. Then I tore it up and flushed it down the toilet. Because I am stronger than they thought. Stronger than they ever were. Stronger than what they made me survive. I didn't fall apart. I didn't beg. I didn't disappear. I raised a child in a storm and taught him how to stand even when no one claps for him. I rebuilt from the ground up. I earned every inch of peace I have now, and I protected it with the kind of fire they'll never understand. They can block me, erase me, pretend I never existed. But they'll never forget what it felt like to lose the only one who never needed them. The mini update. It was a Tuesday. Nothing special about it. Just another ordinary morning. Cereal on the counter. Eli rushing to find his left shoe. Grandma calling to say Frank was trying to fix something that didn't need fixing. Then my phone buzzed. It was an email from a scholarship foundation I'd forgotten I applied to months ago. One that helps fund continuing education for military widows. I opened it expecting another polite rejection. Instead, the first word was, "Congratulations." I read the email 3 times before it sank in. They were offering to cover full tuition for a 2-year program. Any program I wanted. I just stood there in the kitchen holding my phone like it might disappear. I hadn't told anyone I'd applied. Not Grandma. Not Eli. I did it one night after putting him to bed thinking why not try. Then I forgot about it completely. Now here it was. A door I hadn't even dared to knock on was swinging open. When I told Grandma, she didn't cry or gasp or give a big speech. She just said, "About damn time," and poured us both coffee. Eli hugged me and said, "You're gonna be the smartest person in the whole building. And maybe I won't be. But I'll be there. I'll be sitting in a classroom learning something new, building something just for me, with no one to steal it, no one to claim it, no one to mock it. Just me, starting over again. But this time by choice. And that's the best part.